Next up is good friend Ray Watson, who is with CEO Nexus. Some of you are part of his peer group of CEOs, but we call him the Silver Gray Fox because he has played so many roles in his past. And he'll be joined by Doug Foreman of Fringe Benefit Plans, and we're going to speak to the whole issue of incentive compensation and ownership thinking, and how to establish that in your company now if it doesn't already exist. So without further delay, Ray, take over.
Okay, what we're going to talk about here, it's always great to be up last as we're on a glide path for lunch, so I'm going to try to keep it light as we go through this, and hopefully you can take a few nuggets home with you in how you're running the business and how you're dealing with your employees. But what we're going to talk about is ownership thinking. There's some great books out there that I'll show at the end that you can read about, but the idea is that you'll see the business model for the 21st century. So think back to the end of the 19th century, the 20th century. It was totally the ownership or the owners of the company and the employees really meant nothing other than they were chattel to get to the end result. A great book by Upton Sinclair called The Jungle pointed out the horrors of the meatpacking industry in Chicago. And of course that gave rise then to the unions, it gave rise more to taking ownership or the employees being more important. And then we moved into the 1950s and we saw books like Up the Organization by Townsend, we saw Peter Drucker, and we came more of a organization management of executive management, but employees meant something and there was more interest in employees. Well, now we're talking about ownership thinking. The whole idea is how do we align the ownership thinking of you, the owner, with that of the employee so you have combined objectives and thinking so that you're in it together versus, again, a management and the rest of the organization. So, if we take a look at this chart for a minute, we see that the way an owner thinks is obviously different than the way an employee thinks. You can read it as well as I can, but an employee obviously is thinking more about their paycheck or more about them, where the owner is thinking more about profitability, risk-taking, capital, making payroll, all those other things. So how do you put together an organization that takes the employee and lets them think more like the owner? Because at that point you're going to get more of a synergistic partnership between management and the employee. Entitlement thinking, we hear about that a lot, and I know the young people in the room don't fall in this category, so I'll exclude them from my comments. But as you can see on the right side, entitlement is a delusion built on self-centeredness and laziness. Basically, entitlement thinking is, I'm entitled to it, and I don't have to work hard to get it. And I think as a grandparent, and I see my wife with our grandkids, we don't help this situation because we're entitling our grandchildren, right? We're bringing them up, and I know those that my younger kids are playing in flag football. It doesn't mean that they first place or last place still get a trophy, right? They're entitled. So I think we're kind of at fault, if you will, as adults and the older generation. But it obviously becomes a little more pervasive in our industry. I think there's more entitlement thinking today, I think, than there was in the past. Score is not kept. It's okay, just do your stuff. I mean, can you imagine playing a football game with no scoreboard? I mean, so there has to be score, and you have to be earning what you versus an entitlement. So what's the principles of ownership thinking? I want a couple stories on this, and if I've worked with you before, you've heard those stories, but I think they're great stories, and I'll tell them again. Number one is understand the why of what your business is doing. So this is aside from just the financial aspect of it, but what is your passion? The great book by Simon Sinek says Start With Why. It's got a great story in there that talks about at the turn of the century, the United States government put a prize out there for the first organization that was to gain powered manned flight. 1900s, 1902, in that area. A guy named Langley was the odds-on favorite to win that because he was well known. In fact, Langley Air Force Base is named after him today, so he didn't go away after this. But he was the odds-on favorite. He had the money, he had the talent, he had the notoriety, he was getting all the press about it. He was the odds-on favorite to be the first person to achieve powered manned flight. But what he didn't know is there was two guys in Dayton, Ohio that ran a bicycle shop. They had no money, they had no notoriety, but what they did is they had a passion to do what they do because what they accomplished would change mankind. Langley was only in it for himself. He wanted headlines. And he didn't do it for the why, the purpose. He did it for himself. When these guys in Dayton, the Wright brothers did it, they did it because they had a passion to do it. Now, I don't think anybody in the room is doing a business that's going to change humankind, as flight did. But think about what you do and how you deliver it, and can you get your employees to understand the why, the passion, the purpose of what you do. You've got to get them to believe what you believe. And if they believe what you believe, you can accomplish greater things than if you're separate from that. The other story I like to tell, I had occasion to meet with, dinner with, and hear him speak, was a guy named Peter Schultz. He was the CEO of Porsche in the early 1980s. And at that time, I didn't realize at the time, but Porsche had a problem. In fact, there was talk that Volkswagen was going to purchase them. They were struggling back in the early 1980s. And Peter Schultz came over and took over as CEO. He's got great stories. He's got a great book out there called Driving Force, if you want to read about what happened there. But the one thing that he did is he made sure that everybody understood, no matter what their job was in the organization, that they were part of the overall success of it. So he went into the assembly line and took everybody through. So the guy that was putting the bolts on the cowling on the engine that came by, he took that person and showed them the finished product of this great driving machine. And that you are as important as anybody else in the end result. And if you don't do your job, the organization doesn't do their job. So think about that. No matter who's in your organization, make sure they understand what their contribution and what their value to the organization is. The bottom one, the highlighted one, which we'll talk to in a little bit, is that for an employee to understand what it takes to make a profit in your business, they need to understand basic accounting. There's another book that I'll show as a reference. It's called The Great Game of Business by Jack Stack. He was a guy that took over a business up in, I believe it was in the Milwaukee area. They were a motor rebuilding company. They were going to shut the company down, and Jack and other employees bought the company. He today gives seminars. I had a big company I worked with that went to one of his seminars, and what he took away from that, he actually has his accounting department give classes to every employee in how accounting works and what it takes to make a profit in the business. And we'll get into a little bit more of that. So what's the components of ownership thinking? Well, the passion, the why, the people piece of it obviously is the key. But there's a lot of components in that. And those of you that I work with and deal with the EOS process and attraction, if you read that, one of the things they talk about is to get it, want it, and have the capacity to do it when you put people in place. So the first two are non-negotiable. If a person does not get it or want it, that's a no. They should not be put in that particular seat. If they don't have quite the capacity, there might be some training that they can do and get them up to speed. I work with a company down in Sarasota, and I was talking to the CEO. I said, "What's your succession plan? Who's going to take over?" He said, "Well, the lady back here that did this is going to be the person." I said, "Well, great." I talked to her later in the day. She didn't want any part of it. So there was a want it right away, but the owner didn't understand that. He thought that was the person that could take over. But that person, he never discussed it. Never got to the facts on it. Okay, Gallup, they do a lot of surveys, very reputable. you heard about employee engagement. Employee engagement just merely means that an employee has an emotional, committed, to the company. There was not 100% thinking like the owner, but the fact that that employee is engaged in what they do. And you can see here that an engaged employee, which across the U.S. is only about 30%, meaning that person has an emotional connection with a company, and they feel passion about what they do. 50% of people go to work for a paycheck. They're gone at the end of the day. They do their job, they do a good job, but they're not engaged in the organization, and they leave for an extra 50 cents if they're an hourly worker, or maybe an extra dollar or two. Then you got 20% that shouldn't be there. And I think you could think about your organization. I have a friend of mine who calls it the brotherhood of the miserable. So it means that you've got people in your organization that absolutely shouldn't be there. They're a detriment to it. So you need to identify those people and offer them an opportunity to do something else. Try to get your employees engaged at a higher level than where they are now. Now, how do you figure out what that is? Well, Gallup has a great survey. It's 12 questions. It's been around for years. They've tested it through hundreds and hundreds of thousands of employees. And you can go just Google Q12 Gallup. They'll charge you $15 per employee, and it's taken anonymously. And you get a report back that shows how they measure against those 12 questions, as well as how they measure individually, anonymously. But it gives you a stake in the ground. And believe it, the companies that I've worked with that have done this have been a little surprised when they get the results. They thought they had a highly engaged workforce, but in fact, if you really ask the hard questions, it may not be. Those questions identify basically four things. Number one, do they understand their job and do they have the tools to do their job? Number two is, are they getting recognition for what they do? I find that the lack of recognition in an organization is the one key driver that puts people away. They don't feel they're important and that they're contributing to the organization. The third thing is, do they match with the culture of your organization? Do they feel good about being involved in your organization? And lastly, do they have the opportunity to grow and learn? So if you use those questions, even from an internal management standpoint, those are four principles that if you're focusing on, chances are your engagement levels will go up. But if you have your employees take that, what you'll do is you get a baseline, you get a stake in the ground, and you can kind of see where you might be off if you're getting a lot of lower scores and I don't understand my job and I don't have the tools to do it. Obviously it gives you an area to start looking on things.
How do you see the engagement rate for the future, considering the bigger, the millennials, or the new guys, these guys are here in university, they are seeing life different than we were seeing, right?
Right.
About success, about what we do.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's perception's reality, right?
Yes, yes.
And so how you may perceive your workforce and how they are perceiving the company and they're involved may be different. So at least gives you an opportunity to kind of see where you stand, and it's done anonymously, and it's obviously, you can kind of maybe identify some people where it might be low. You do not take personal actions after this because you'll never get another honest score afterwards, but it gives you an overall corporate culture, philosophy, and how to proceed. Well-designed incentive plan. Now, the bottom line to any sort of incentive plan is it needs to move the dial. Remember I said that the ownership thinking, the premise is to align employee thinking with the financial objectives of your company. When it's all said and done, we got to make a profit. We can't do anything if we don't make money. But if employees understand and can benefit in the success of your organization, it then is not an entitlement. An entitlement, again, is if you give them a Christmas turkey out this year, and next year you didn't quite do as well and you don't give the Christmas turkey out. What's the thinking? Where's my Christmas turkey? I got it last year, why didn't I get it this year? When performance actually went down instead of up. So you got to make people understand what those profit drivers are and how they can contribute. I mean, it gets down to the person in the warehouse that's fulfilling an order. And they know that they've got to get that order filled correctly 99% of the time, because you don't get paid to refill the order. That costs money. And if they can really understand and engage in that, they understand how important quality and delivery and those sort of things are. Okay, take a look at that. I assume all of you that have a business here have some sort of incentive plan. How many of your plans might hit some of those areas that I would say are poorly designed? In other words, some of them may create separate fiefdoms or silos in your organization. You may have a separate plan for sales, and underwriting doesn't even participate. The goals may be thought to be unrealistic. They're changed, they're arbitrary, and you're not keeping score. So think about that in your current plan and see if it meets some of that criteria. Checklists for design, I'm not going to go through each one of those, you've got them in your book, but it's just a point-by-point to take a look at your particular incentive plan and see if it meets some of those, and those are some of the decisions that you may have to make. In the essence of time, I'm not going to go through each one of those things. Okay, here's a busy chart. Can you raise that up just a little bit? So this is conceptually, actually this one gives you some absolute, but I just want to simplify it for you to the idea of an incentive plan that engages employees in what they do. So, we got a bit of marker here, just in case. Okay, so this is our profit tree, if you will. And at some point you got break even, and anything below it is a loss. There should be no incentives paid on not meeting anything better than your break even. In other words, money in, money out, we made no money. Obviously there should not be any incentive. So in the Christmas turkey analogy, right, the people were expecting that Christmas turkey because last year you had some money and you made the Christmas turkey. All right, then you've got a tier here that is profit. But obviously, in an organization, part of your profit has to be rolled back into the company. You may have plant equipment expansion. You may be hiring new people. You may be opening another branch. You might have to buy more equipment. Plus, you have to build equity in your business because, as we talked earlier, if you want to sell a business, it's got to be valuable. It's got to show equity. It's got to show net worth. So that piece is not bonusable because it's important that you have to make that to be a viable company and to grow your company. You've got, like you construct bonding lines, lines of credit with a bank. They're going to look at your balance sheet. Your balance sheet's got to show some equity. You've got to show current ratios, meaning that your assets are covering your liabilities. So that part of it is not bonusable. But then above this is where you set your goals. And if you see in that chart, I believe they have one at some level there, which says that if we exceed this line, yeah, go ahead and put that up again.
Yeah.
If we exceed that line, then we're going to pay out a proportion of that money in incentive bonuses. And you can distribute that differently. You can have it as a percentage of your total payroll, which would allocate to a particular, someone's making $50,000, and you're going to allocate a total of 6% of payroll for incentives. Then there would be 6% of that 50,000 would go to that 50,000 wage earner, but it could be distributed to everybody. You can have things like it says on there, you pay it out quarterly, but hold back half of it because you don't know if this quarter was a great quarter, next quarter might be down, reconcile at the end of the year. So there's a lot of ways to do it, but the bottom line is to tie incentives to the performance and the goal setting that you have in your company, and make sure everybody understands that and they can participate in it, and there's no cap on it. The more money you make, if you allocate 6% of that overage to an incentive, it's going to be 6% of whatever number you take. So there's a driver to do better than what we set. And obviously the goals need to be set. You know, it's like the United Way chart, you know, and every month we see, I know a company that I work with has got that kind of chart in their break room showing where they are in achieving those levels. You can walk in there every day and say, yeah, I'm going to get, you know, here's, based on my salary, this is how much I'm going to get, because this is where the company is, and this is where we're going. Why explain this to employees? Well, two reasons. Number one, if you don't explain anything, people make stuff up, and usually they make up negative stuff. And the second thing there is many employees probably think the company is far more profitable than they are, and the owner is backing his truck up and loading it up, loading the trunk up with money and taking it away. That's the kind of the perception. I know that's not the total perception, but let's face it, that's particularly if you're having more, you know, where your delivery driver, your warehouse worker, you know, they have a different perception. And so you want to align their perception with the real perception. Don't assume the leadership team, your leadership team, is financially astute. That's a wrong assumption. Because I've sat down with many people that are VPs in companies, they can't explain a balance sheet to me. So it's important that they understand that. So how do we achieve that? Well, number one, go ahead.
Just on that, because as a public company, they're going to know what you're doing and things like
Yeah,
that.
if a public company, they know, but do they understand it? I guess that's the other side of
If
it.
you're a private company, how much you're going to share with an employee that they don't perceive is going to be one thing or the other.
Well,
right?
You know, there's an argument, and in
Hey,
there,
this year we're doing a whole lot more than we did last year. And they said, well, you don't know about that $50,000 machine or $100,000 machine I had to buy to let us do better. That came out of it, so therefore.
okay, well, that's why it's important to kind of get the basic conceptual understanding. In other words, that machine did not change the value of your business. You changed one asset with another. Now, obviously, you depreciate it down, that sort, but you're changing cash or you're incurring debt for that machine. But it's in that next tier that you have budgeted that's not part of this incentive pool.
But in a private company, what I'm saying is the employees really don't know that.
Well, the question is how comfortable do you feel with sharing financial information with your employees? I don't think you have to get into the nitty-gritty, but I'll show you here in a second what you should be able to do. So one way to do it is to equate your business with their paycheck. Because businesses and individuals work the same way. They get a paycheck, they got to pay bills, they got to make the mortgage payment. You know, they have probably two fixed assets, potentially. They got a house and they got a car or a couple cars. And then what you got at the left is savings or what's left over. And your business is equity. It's net, you know, it's your net after taxes. So that's one way to do it, is to kind of say, look, this business runs just like you do individually, and explain it that way. The other is a little more complex as to how you want to get there. But remember what I told you that Jack Stack does. Jack Stack offers reoccurring accounting classes for all his employees. So they kind of go step by step on how to understand what a balance sheet is, what an income statement is, and what a cash flow projection is. You can't make payroll with accounts receivable. Cash isn't cash, unless it's cash, which Fred Scott was a famous quote that he made. So to your point, I think the employee needs to understand that just the fact we sold something, we had a big order come in, but what if you don't collect that money for 60 to 75 days? You now have to go to your line of credit, you have to dip into your cash, whatever it is. But I think it's important for an employee to understand how business works on a very cursory level. Now, Brad Hams, who wrote the book Ownership Thinking, he is totally transparent with what he does. His argument is, listen, you know, people are going to find out anyway. I mean, so what if the competitors know we're making this kind of profit margin, or so what? You know, I'm going to be transparent. You may not want to be that transparent. But the idea is that they need to understand, for example, let's say you bring 10% to the bottom line. That means for you to make $10, you got to sell $100 worth of stuff. But if they save $100 worth of stuff, 100% of that goes to the bottom line. It means you didn't spend it. So that's key to kind of understand some of the basics. So the other way to do it is with key performance indicators, leading indicators, metrics, whatever you want us to call them, is to identify certain aspects of your business that you know, if you're on track with them, will produce a certain amount of revenue and profit. Let's say, for example, you know that for every 10 proposals you give out, you're going to get one contract and your average sale is $50,000. If you want to do $500,000 in business, then you're going to have to do, what's the math? You know, you're going to have to do 100 proposals. So you can measure whether or not the metrics that you define to identify your success as you're on track with or not, and each individual can understand their particular number as to what they need to be doing to contribute to that. You got 4 salespeople, you need 10 proposals a week. That means, you know, 2.5 proposals have to be put out per individual, because you know, based on experience factors, industry standards, that's what has to be done. And you can break that down into every aspect. So, implementation, again, just a checklist to look through it. Rapid improvement plan, again, to Brad Ham's comment is that if you could identify some key areas that you can shore up and increase profitability, productivity, proficiency, efficiency, then maybe you start with that and you can measure that we want to reduce our accounts receivable collection from 90 days to 75 days, which includes the whole organization to get that, and you can work on how we've gotten that down. And why is that important? Well, we need cash, right? There's some of the reading that I suggest. Obviously, Brad Ham, Jack Stack, Start With Why, as I mentioned. Marcus Buckingham's associated with Gallup organization. It's a great book, kind of about, it's called First Break All the Rules. And then in our CEO groups, we use this Traction book by Gina Wickham. So if you walk away with anything today, go get those books, go through them. They give you some real down-to-earth kind of functional, implementable kind of ideas in which you can utilize. But the idea is, stop paying out incentives if they don't move the dial. If they don't improve the financial performance of your organization, all you're doing is giving away money and creating an entitlement mentality. So, next I think we've got Doug. Doug is going to talk about some practical utilization in terms of the benefit world that you can utilize in this ownership thing.
Thank you, Ed. Appreciate that. And before I get started, I have one favor to ask. I'd like everybody to stand up. Stand up. We're on the home stretch here. There you go. Take a stretch. Put your hands on your hip. Put your left hand in. No. Just kind of lean to the side and say hello. Good to see you. That's good. A little stretch. A little back. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. I want to tag on a little bit with Ray had going on, discussion about incentives. Right. So, incentives, a lot of times you think of that as tax. There's tax bonus going out to individuals, and when you're paying tax, that often is expensive for a business because it increases your tax liability, increases FICA tax, workers' comp, all these additional taxes that occur. And I heard Jim earlier, you guys said you implemented an incentive plan. I heard you say it was expensive, and I think it was probably a cash type incentive. So I wanted to touch on a couple of incentive programs that can be more tax efficient for you. And they do tie in regards to benefit programs. Some of these you might already have in place, and this can tag on top of it. It's not going to work for everybody, but in certain situations, these programs seem to work well. One is an enhanced benefit program that actually covers additional health, dental, vision benefits on top of what you might already have in place. So this incentive benefit, it covers the out-of-pocket expense that if you offer a health insurance plan, a lot of the health plans now have $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 deductible out-of-pocket expenses for your employees. And so this is a benefit program that helps cover that out-of-pocket expense for your employees, again, with pre-tax dollars. Another is an HSA bank account, which is a type of health savings program, which I'll touch on after I talk about the health benefit program. And I do want to encourage any questions that you might have, please ask as I'm going. I'm okay with that. Just pop them out as we go. The first benefit that we actually have a tagline for, we call it the ultimate health coverage. And again, just to reiterate, this is there does need to be a employer-paid health insurance plan already in place, and this goes on top of that benefit. And it is one of those that under Section 105, and I can get David back up here and talk in nauseam about Section 105 section code. But this is a legal benefit that under that code, where an employer can pay for certain employees. When I say certain, just drill down on that. That means you can discriminate. You can have a certain class of employees that fit in this category. It's not something you have to offer to everybody, which under a traditional medical plan, under Obamacare or healthcare reform, when you offer it to one, you have to offer it to everybody. There's no discrimination allowed under those type of benefits. So this is one that can be for key folks that you set up the plan. And other big advantage, so right here, I just want to put this out to Paul. It does cover wigs. So but you're a beautiful hair. You really don't need it.
Only for women?
For women?
Only for women?
No, that's why I was pointing out Paul. But they cover certain benefits that may not even be covered under the major medical plan. Wigs, hearing aids. I have two of my kids wear hearing aids, and it costs $3,000 every time my daughter loses her hearing aids. And major medical plans don't cover that. So this is this additional layer that you put on. You can cover hearing aids, dental work that you may have out-of-pocket expenses, LASIK surgery, adult orthodontia, acupuncture, massage. Those items are not covered typically under a major medical plan. The big one that we get is this top-to-toe executive physicals. Under your usual health plan, you can get your preventive covered at no charge, but there's an executive level benefit that's not covered, and that's where you might go to the Richard Clinic or the Mayo Clinic. And those cost $2,500, $3,000, and they do everything head to toe in one visit. So again, for key folks, this resonates well for companies that are trying to groom somebody in that ownership thinking, as well as an incentive benefit for certain people that meet the criteria. Any questions on this slide? I want to touch on a couple of scenarios where we've had this type of benefit come into play. One is a true sales organization. They were in pharmaceutical sales, so they had roughly 75 employees. About 50 of them were salespeople, and they implemented this ultimate health program and gave an incentive if the salespeople reached a certain criteria, and they rolled it out over a year. So if you guys were rolled out the first year, if you guys reached this bar, next year you'll be on this type of a benefit program. Then people are in it for a year. And then if they didn't meet the criteria, so every open enrollment, they have certain people who moved in, certain people moved out, but an incentive benefit for those salespeople, again, not increasing their compensation by enrolling them in this ultimate health care program. That group, they liked the idea because they had several executives, they traveled a lot, so the benefit was an emergency travel benefit where they can repatriate or bring them back home. That was covered by the plan as well, not at the employee's expense. Another example, just a small company, they had 10 employees, and they said, well, we just want to do it for the two owners and the one child in the business, and then they were trying to move towards retirement. They had another employee that they wanted to bring in and would be an owner with their son, and so they just rolled it out for just those 4 people. So again, discriminate small group. The window cleaning company, I wanted to think on Vicky, if you don't mind. I see you texting over there.
No, actually, I was reading my Obamacare benefits. So I would have more knowledge because I saw me up there.
Well, but before you do, so Vicki, you heard earlier about she has this window cleaning business and several blue collar folks in the business, so you wouldn't expect it really be a great benefit for that type of industry. But one thing I just touch on you built a great culture in your company, and this is, I think, is added to it. But you don't think how exciting window cleaning is, but her folks, and you read about in the paper once or twice a year, when they're cleaning the windows during Christmas time, they're up there in the
Eddie
Santa.
Morris and Arnold Palmer,
It's so
the people in the costumes, yes.
Yeah, they're the Batman and Spider-Man, so especially at the hospitals, they're up there in those costumes for the kids. I think that's really neat.
Yes, but I can say a couple of years ago, I'm going to say a little more than probably you asked. We used to have only like an Aflac and a colonial policy, and I got a 1099 personally one year, about ripped everybody's head off because nobody said you're going to get a 1099 from these benefits. What had happened is somebody had a very serious accident, and then it caused me to get a little extra money from colonial, and I got 1099, and I was not happy because I had to put it on my tax return. So, came back, Tina came back, and French Benefit came back. They had this great Armada Care policy. It's amazing. And so we have several people in our business that have this. It's cost me about $500. I shouldn't probably talk prices. So it's $500 a month that it costs per employee that I have on it. And then, so for $6,000 a year, they are getting like $100,000 extra per person in the benefit when they look at it. Like our health insurance, all the deductibles, and your out-of-pocket to the hospital can cost up to $5 grand these days. This completely ranges that. So people have been so excited. It's the best golden handcuff that's actually seen. They go to the pharmacy. They get this credit card that pays all their bills from the pharmacy. There's never worry about a $20, $40, $60 tier. So it's been the best thing I've ever done.
Okay,
I was making sure it was, and then they don't get a 1099, it's not taxable to me.
Right, that's the big advantage.
Business expense.
Business expense, trying to get that ownership thinking, tax efficient dollars as opposed to having a $5,000 deductible. You have to earn $7,000, have $2,000 to pay
Yes.
taxes, have the $5,000 to pay your deductible. So this is again, tax favored way to offer this benefit, again, for just a select group, if that's the case. And something that Vicki mentioned on the distraction, reduces the distraction, because if you do have people executive level that's maybe a little older, more mature, and they have more claims, and so this is a way to have less distraction so they can focus on in the business. Help with negotiating with new hires and talent searches, so use it for recruiting. And again, an incentive type program. But it has to be thoughtful, and we have folks that can help with determining what's the best way to make it an incentive program. Any other questions on that type of a program? Next is a benefit that's been around for a long time. It's called a health savings account, an HSA. And many of you, let me ask you this, how many here that are offering health benefits that include a health savings account as part of your benefit package? We have a couple, 3 or 4. So you already have this benefit. The HSA bank account, if a person enrolls in a certain type of health benefit, they can open up an HSA bank account. That bank account, the employee can put money into that bank account, as well as the employer can put money into that bank account. So it's another way that for certain folks that you can have money, if they opened up the HSA and went on this type of benefit, that you could give them money on a pre-tax basis going into this HSA bank account. Once it's in that bank account, they decide, again, ownership thinking and watching their own pocketbook, they decide how they want to spend that money regarding their out-of-pocket expenses for themselves and their family. So another tax favored basis that also could be in some fashion used as an incentive for employees who are enrolled in that type of program. Definitely have to be enrolled in a certain type of benefit to have that. The HSA plan can be offered alongside a traditional plan. So those of you who currently just have traditional plans, like a traditional HMO, PPO, You could offer it as a third option or fourth option for that HSA benefit. So a long-term strategy, something that you might have to roll out over a year or two, but as premiums keep going up every year, sadly, it's a lower cost way to offer a benefit as well as, again, put money into their bank account for them to choose how they want to spend it. Other talk a little bit about recruiting, retaining, and other incentive programs. You heard a lot about culture, compensation, those are easy ones, employee benefit programs. Just touched on how you can enhance your employee benefit programs as a way to help with recruiting and retention. Employee benefit programs in general, whether it's at health, at dental, vision, they are a tax deduction for the company as you're paying for those benefits. So again, another tax favored way. Some of you right now, for your employees, you might only pay 50% of the health insurance premium or 60%. That's a relatively low-cost way to give your employees a raise at open enrollment. You say, well, instead of paying 60, we're going to bump it up to 70. Instead of ever getting everybody a 10% pay raise, again, that increases tax liability, all those things, you can just increase how much you pay towards their health insurance. So don't overlook that as you're looking for incentives for recruiting and retention. Vacation, PTO, professional development. So Ray was talking about how teaching your employees, helping them grow. Another way is, and a lot of times I like to ask the question about your employees, or analyze, analogy, I guess, employees compared to your marriage. So those of you who have been married, currently married, you got married on that day, a marriage day, you told them I love you. Hypothetical question, what if you never told them you loved them again? How would that go?
Not well.
Not well. So liken that to the new employee who comes in. You recruit the employee, you tell them how much you love them. We love you, come on in. What would happen if you never told them you loved them again? They're likely to move on. So one way that you can remind them and show them how much you love them is, we call it the hidden paycheck statement. And this is overlooked by so many folks. You can pay a salary, you offer them all these other benefits, retirement insurance, all these other things, but all they see is, oh, I'm making $50,000. But in the overall pie, it's right now it's probably close to 40% of what is paid on their behalf is stuff that they don't see in their paycheck. So it's that health insurance, the legal, the FICA, the food, the SUDA, all those things. So you can put together a hidden paycheck statement, and we recommend for our clients, they do this every year at your annual review, is show them exactly, you got $50,000, but guess what? We put $7,000 in the FICA for you. We put $10,000 in your health insurance plan. In total, you are costing us as an employer $80,000, $90,000, whatever the number is. And we thank you for working with you, but it's more than just that $50,000. So you do it in this graph format as well as laying it out. But every year and throughout the year, you need to tell them how much you love them and how much you're doing for them, just like you do at home. I have one of these similar that you can use for your spouse, so you can share with them how much you're spending on them too. What's that?
So it's a daily thing.
Daily thing? You should tell your employees every day. I don't know about that. Every day, tell your employees how much you love them. Reason being, I'm not spending too much time here, but this is the unemployment numbers from 2008. You can see it peaked close to 10% unemployment back in 10. Now we're down to 3.9. In Central Florida, I'd argue that that's closer to 3.6. So very, very tight labor market. Employment trends, as tagging on what Ray said, share that mission and vision, complement the workforce, survey your team. These slides are in your packet, and so some of them I'm just going to scan right over. Mission and vision, The reason I put this up here is my company, we've been around 50 years, but this year we reinvented and did a mission vision statement, so we updated our mission and vision. If you have not reviewed yours with your employees, I'd recommend you do so. You're welcome to copy and anything that we put together, but you want to keep that mission and vision in front of your employees as well on a daily basis. And all these books you read, there's certain companies like Ritz-Carlton, they every morning they have a stand-up meeting at the Ritz-Carlton at every location where they touch on their mission, vision, what you're focusing on for that day. That might be a little bit extreme every day, but it really works in that culture. Satisfaction survey, it's in the book, so it's questions that tag along with what Ray had on the Gallup poll. I like this format a little differently. We use this where you just get a little, get the box and try to get a little more information out of them. Why employees leave. This survey was done by HR Bartender, which is a survey company. So you can see the reasons why people leave. So schedule, non-supportive, the compensation benefits. So it's important to know why people are leaving so you can address those issues. Other emerging trends that we're seeing in the industry, this is a big one. You're reading about it all, I'm reading more and more about it all the time. Unlimited PTO, it sounds really scary because a lot of you have 2 weeks PTO, 3-week PTO. We actually rolled this out. I did a lot of study on it. We rolled it out for our employees, but we rolled it out with some certain requirements where to get the unlimited PTO, they have to give so much notice. If it's PTO of 2 weeks or longer, they have to let us know 6 weeks in advance, 8 weeks in advance. So there's these timelines. It's not like Paul can suddenly say, hey, I want to take 3 weeks PTO. So far, it's been working well. But you'll be hearing more about this unlimited PTO in the marketplace. Extended time periods for maternity and paternity, so spouses, husbands are taking time off to spend time with the newborn. That is a trend we're seeing. Paternity or maternity leave, don't hear too much of that. I hear that more on the West Coast, California side as a big benefit. I haven't seen it too much, but a lot of times those trends tend to head from the West Coast to the East Coast, so you might hear more of that, especially in the more millennial crowd. Vacation planning, there's especially the millennial groups, they're setting up where employees can save money through their payroll in a vacation account, and this is an incentive benefit also, but it's not pre-tax. It's a taxable benefit. If the employer contributes to that vacation fund, it's another benefit that can be set up to help encourage your employees to save money for their retirement. I mean, not for retirement, for their vacation. Coaching services, paid sabbaticals. That's it. Yeah, so that's it in regards to what we're seeing in current trends, pre-tax ways to do certain benefits on a pre-tax basis, and again, increase that culture. Continue to tell your employees you love them every day. Every day. All right, thank you.